Okay, with all committee members in the room, I call this public meeting of the Audit Committee of Fairfax County School Board to order. We need to first certify our closed meeting. So in order to comply with Section 2.23712D of the Code of Virginia, it is necessary for the committee to certify that since the Fairfax County School Board Audit Committee convened a closed meeting on September 16, 2024, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements and only such business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meetings were heard, discussed, or considered by the committee during closed meeting. Do I have a motion? Okay, moved by Nanette, seconded by Aparna. All those in favor? Okay, 4 of us. All those opposed? All those abstaining?
Mr. Chairman, I missed a part of the meeting, so I need to abstain.
Thank you. Okay, great. So with that, we can launch into our audit committee meeting. Where did the agenda go? Since we have a number of new faces in the room, I thought we would start by briefly going around the room. So my name is Ryan McElveen. I'm chair of the audit committee and an at-large member of the school board. We'll just go around this way. So over to you, Miss Lady.
Good evening. I'm Robin Lady, and I'm the Drainsville representative on the school board.
Il Youngmoon School Board Member at Large, returned after the pandemic.
Good evening. I'm Aparna Krishnan. I'm the audit committee member, and this is my second year with the audit committee. Thank you.
Good evening. Marty Smith, Chief of Staff for the school system.
Obviously, I'm the newest member of the audit committee. I'm a community member.
Brittany Hamilton, auditor.
Luke Robertson, auditor.
Tim Tishman, IT auditor. I just started this month, at the beginning of the month.
Good evening, everyone. Munya Shihab, auditor.
Danielle Moore, deputy auditor general.
And I'm Esther Co-Auditor General.
Wonderful, and thank you, and welcome Tim to the team. We're happy to have you, and thank you, Nanette, as well, for agreeing to join this raucous group. So, with those introductions taken place, I will turn it over to Auditor General, who will provide us with some updates from the OAG office.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of the school year. And every year when we first started, I love to present the OAG team's roles and responsibility document. If the clerk could pull up item 2.1. Oh, so we have a little bit of technical challenge right now, but you can access the document via Bob Docs. And I'm going through the document for the Auditor General update. So we have a PowerPoint there, and I can go through it kind of like at a high level. So the purpose of this document to give all of you kind of a baseline about who we are, what we do, about the OAG. So the first one is talking about the mission, which is on slide 2. The goal for our office is to examine the ongoing processes for FCPS for effectiveness and for efficiency so that we can be fully accountable to the citizen for the county. And we report to the school board through the audit committee who is here today, and we are fully independent, and we have authority to audit any school's programs, departments, and functions. And annually, we will share with the audit committee, again, it's you all who are here, and then for a plan about what audit topics to be audited, and then it will be approved by the school board. And slide 3 is basically who you see here, our warm bodies here, our auditors, including me and also Deputy Auditor General here. And as you can see that on the org chart, the Auditor 2 right now, it shows as vacant, but actually we are at the final stage to be able to solidify like our final candidate, so it should be filled very soon. And we also utilize some of the hourly auditors to support the work as well. And then moving on the next one, I always try how to explain what we do in a layman term. So there are 4 main things that we do. The first one is risk assessment, so meaning a process to determine audit topics. So I got these questions a lot. It's like, hey, Esther, how do you select audit topics? Is it because some of the topics that you like more or you don't like more? And I said, obviously not. There is like a very scientific process to identify the topics through benchmarking with the other school districts, internal audit function to see what do they do. And then we also looked at the financial impact, we looked at the reputational risk, etc. So that's risk assessment topic that all of the audit committee members will be part of. So I will come to you to get your thoughts as well throughout so that you can be part to determine the plan. The second pillar is internal audit. And of course, that's our bread and butter. For example, today we will be presenting the audit, the grand audit with you all. And then we also do regular school audits, etc., that we'll bring to the audit committee to discuss. And then the third one is fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. So our office maintains a hotline, and I have a little bit of statistic to show at this first meeting in a little bit too. And the last pillar is outreach and education. So we always invited ourselves to meetings, and I also want to thank management too, to allow us to be able to present to the finance technician, the comptroller office allow us to do that. We also recently participate at the leadership kickoff so that we get the opportunity to, share about see something, say something with our school-based administrators as well. So there's definitely a collaborative effort there. And moving on to slide 5, here is more information about risk assessment. And I think I kind of highly go through that, so I'm going to skip through that slide. And slide 6 is our internal audit process. So here you can see that there are 5 steps involved in the whole audit process. And someone will say, okay, is it after the report is issued, then the audit is done? Actually, it's not. The fact is not. And our team will continue the follow-up process to making sure the recommendations are timely done. So for example, today we would have the follow-up review to share with the audit committee about the status of how far we are with the recommendations. And then moving on to slide 7, and of course, as an auditor, we need to have a criteria and a standard to audit. Within OAG, we follow the government auditing standards. And today, I don't have the yellow book with me, but literally, this is a book in yellow cover. And then we follow that, and it is really important for us to remain independent. That's number one thing that highlighted in the yellow book. And we have to obtain sufficient documentation before we can mention the findings. And I also want to plug here too that a year or 2 years ago, our office has been audited by an independent audit entity. So we have a peer review program. So we got the highest possible rating in that review that we don't have any finding from it. So moving on to slide 8, it talks about what, in the findings, what type of components it will include. So maybe with that, we can also then flip over to slide 9, which shows the audit plan that has been approved by the board just in the past summer. Maybe we can just look at it here briefly. The first 2 items are carryover audits that we will be completing them likely in October, November timeframe and bring it to the audit committee. And then it also lists the new engagements that have been approved by the board. So the details of each of these engagements are included as appendix to this document. So in case if you want to know more about, for example, the construction and renovation contracting process, the relevant slide is within this stack for your review at a later time. And then moving on to slide 10, here it gathers all the other duties that my office perform. And so one item I also want to highlight about outreach and education, which is item number 5. OAG obtained a certification status from the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy that we can provide CPE, continuous professional education, for staff members. And audit committee members are welcome to join too. If you need CPE, you are welcome to join our training. And then with that, we can go over to slide 11, which is here it lays out the timing of when each of the audits we plan to be completed and from planning to completion. So we will likely be bringing the reports back to this table to discuss at the tail end of each of this audit. And the audit, of course, include planning, execution, and reporting. And if you want to know more, there's a hyperlink included on this slide that will take you back to the full plan. And then we are almost done with this presentation, and then we are at slide 12. Slide 12 summarizes our result about the Fraud, Waste, and Abuse Hotline. So our office is responsible, to receive and provide a confidential means to the public and also to our employees. When they see something may not go right, they will report to us. That has a financial implication. So as you can see that the case loads that we have in the past fiscal year 21 to 23 is about 50 cases, and last year we have almost 80. 79. And if you ask me about the reason behind there is an increase, I really believe it is the awareness program that we have been very aggressively, actively been doing. And I also want to thank the school board members here, help us to promote it in your newsletters and also let people know that this method exists so that they can contact us. So on a regular basis to the audit committee member, I will bring back this table about the inquiry areas that we received, and then I will also be briefing you all with the details depending on the nature of the cases, either in a public meeting forum or in a closed meeting forum. And then with that, the last page before we get to the appendix is the outreach and education. So we mentioned a lot of that already. And I also want to highlight that our office have been doing a monthly monthly newsletter. We call it as the Audit Bus. Danielle is our main author, leader on it. So we are issuing it so that public can also be benefited from the good work that we do. And it's available to everyone, and also our employees have been subscribing to that too. And then with that, I have two appendixes here. The first appendix is the Auditor General's, my job description. So for Audit Committee better understand kind of what I am focusing on, and also for the public to know too. And then Appendix 2 are the details behind each of the audit topics that have been approved by the board. So with that, I would like to hand the time back to Ryan.
Wonderful. So over to committee members to pose any questions or comments on what Esther has presented. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to, thank you very much for the presentation. Moving on to item number 3, FY24 grants audit. I think we're going over to Munia.
Thank you, Ryan. So I'll be spending the next few minutes summarizing our OAG performance audit of grants. This audit was conducted or performed in accordance with the FY24 approved plan. The primary objectives of these audits were to examine compliance with grants requirements and evaluate the operation and effectiveness of related grant internal controls. So to understand and assess the relevant management controls in place, we reviewed applicable grants requirements and FCPS guidelines and conducted walkthroughs with grant process owners. And to test compliance, we selected a sample of appropriated grants and non-appropriated grants. This sample includes federal, state, and other grants. Our sample also included subrecipients grants and local school activity grants, or LSAF grants. So during our testing phase, we assessed both grants pre-award and post-award processes to ensure grants application are properly approved and reviewed, expenses are allowable, reviewed, and submitted for reimbursement in a timely manner. We looked at the required reports per the grantor to ensure that they're submitted for reimbursement by the the reports are submitted to the grantor by the due date, and grants are monitored and complied with the grant's provisions or the grant terms. As a result of this audit, we identified one moderate risk finding and one observation that we highlighted on page 13 of the report. This finding is related to compliance with school grants. So we tested 10 school grants and found 4 grants did not comply with the grants regulation and manual. Specifically, we noted that the appropriate process was not followed to ensure grants funds were adequately approved, dispersed, and tracked. So for example, there was a grant totaling $500. The purpose of this grant was to provide funding for an outdoor learning at Cabron Elementary School in exchange for teacher volunteering hours. So this grant included an in-kind contribution criteria. In this case, it was a teacher volunteer requirement. And per the grant's regulation and manual, this grant meet the criteria of an appropriated grant and must be submitted to grants development team for review, for content review and budget approval. And also it should have been submitted to grants development team and tracked in focus. However, we noted that the grant was not submitted to the grants development team prior to the grants application submission, and it was not tracked in focus, which is the financial system for appropriated grants. Also, this grant was not approved by the principal prior to the grants application submission. We also noted that the grant fund was deposited in the local school activity fund account, and a total disbursement of $500 was directly dispersed to the teacher from the local school activity fund. We could not determine whether the grant funds were used for the purpose of the grant, since there was no supporting documentation to support the disbursement of $500. The other 3 grant exceptions were grants managed by Educate Fairfax. The grants total was around $26,000. We noted that these grants were not approved by the principal prior to the grants application. And also one of these grants in the amount of $22,447, which exceed the $5,000 amount to be considered as a local school activity fund grant, was not submitted to the grants development team prior to the grants application, and therefore was wrongly classified as a local school activity instead of an appropriated grant. As a result, the grant was tracked in grade plans instead of focus. So based on this finding, we recommend that school principals should review and approve grant application prior to submission. Grants management team should clarify the grants requirements to schools, especially when grants are managed by Educate Fairfax, and also grants management team should provide training to potential grants applicants to ensure that the proper approval process is followed. And last, we identified one observation related to updates to the grants regulation and the grants manual, where we noted that the regulation and the manual reference multiple components which were no longer available. We recommend grants management team should consider updating the regulation and manual to align with FCPS current processes. Management concur with the finding and recommendation included in this report, and as always, we appreciate the consultation and cooperation extended by the management. And now I'll hand the time back to Ryan for any further discussion.
Great. And I will turn to management just to see what response you have. But before I do that, I just want to recognize that we have our Executive Director of Educate Fairfax, Lynette Henry, here, as well as our Director of Procurement Services. I think that's your title, Michelle Pratt. Yeah. Marty, over to you.
So thank you. And yes, we did concur, and I'm going to turn it over to our finance team. Tiffany's here to talk a little bit more about the grants management process.
Okay.
I guess Seema will be doing that.
Tiffany's going to help me. So, as far as a response to this, we are going to tackle it in 3 ways to assure that these kind of matters are addressed. And first and foremost is training. So it's training the teachers and the principals to make sure that they understand grants and they understand when grants are supposed to be reported to our focus system, and when grants are supposed to be kept in the local school activity fund side, and also that they understand that principals must approve the grants that are received. So that was one thing, and we are going to do a quick reference guide to help teachers and principals and then put that into our trainings. The second thing is we already have a grants management system, so we will enhance it to make sure that whenever there's a grant initiated at the schools or departments, they have to go into the system and put in exact information of the grant. It's going to trigger them where if it's over $5,000 and it has certain components, like a labor component, in-kind, superintendent approval, anything technology-based, those kind of grants have to be in the appropriated side and in the focus system. And this grant system is going to guide them to trigger that, hey, this is a grant, it meets these criteria, now it needs to get reported in this direction. And then we have a process that Dr. Henry and my team have been working very closely on the Educate Fairfax grants and donations. And we have a process where we've created a memo. So for every donation and every grant, there's a memo that comes from Educate Fairfax to the principal, to whoever the person is at the school site or department, and the comptroller's office, and the grants management team as CC. So we're all in notification that a grant is being received and can take appropriate action and review for those grants. So we've worked hard on that process. Dr. Henry, do you want to say anything else on that?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. It has been great to be involved in this process and even to hear your findings, because it allowed us to be able to come together with the Comptroller's Office and coming up not only with a plan for our grants, but also for our donations. And so being able to work in collaboration with FCPS is making sure that when we are providing any kind of donation or grant to the school, that we're doing it in alignment with FCPS. So this is wonderful to be able to continue this collaboration. We'll continue to work together for any types of grants that we are working and donations that are coming into FCPS. Thank you.
And then as far as the observation that was made, where we needed an update to the grants manual, we agree. Some of our manuals are outdated with the links, so we're taking proactive action to update the links, making sure that we'd have the quick reference guide, and then updating a web form that can allow for communication of grants.
Marty, anything else? Okay, great. Audit committee members, floor is open. Ms. Lady?
What is Great Plains?
Okay, so Great Plains is an accounting system that's used on the local school activity fund side, which is on the school side. And that's mainly for accounting transactions, yes.
Okay, so the local funds are in Great Plains? Okay. My second question is this, with the Educate Fairfax grants, were the monies misused, or was it just all in accounting as to where it was put? Like, did the schools do with fidelity what they were supposed to do with the money given to them?
Yes, the schools did do what they were intended to do. It's just that the principal was not notified, and they didn't use the right process. So whenever, for this grant, a person was paid, an employee was paid. So whenever you have a payment to an employee, that can never happen in the local school activity fund side. So it's a process where, had they understood the policy, they would have put it into the Focus ERP system, not in the LSAF side.
And my last question is, like, what year did this grant snafu take place for the high schools listed?
This was an audit for fiscal year 2024. Esther, did you go, or was it 23 and 24?
So our scope period was our scope period was starting July 2022 to December 2023.
That makes sense, thank you.
And if I may also add a little bit to Ms. Lady to your second question. So in this case, some of them are money, paid to the staff. It has to go through certain HR process in order to withhold the personnel tax, and that was not taking place.
Do we have other questions? Yes, Ms. Christian.
So first of all, thank you so much for, this information. And I'm going to have some basic questions to start with, and then I'll probably go into specifics. And thank you so much, Dr. Henry, and also Seema, for working together. So it's absolutely fantastic to know that the fidelity of the system has been maintained. So, okay, thank you. So the first question, sure. The first question was, when was the grants audit done prior by your office?
You mean the audit grant?
To this, for this particular, the scope of this audit being grant, and so when was this done prior to this, just the prior one, like 2 years back?
So the scope of this audit was, we looked at grants starting July 2022 to December 2023.
So
And we completed this audit in May of the previous grants audit. Let me look. Give me 1 second.
That's
I'll look
fine,
at the
that's okay. As I said, this is basic, I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, I was here for the last grants audit, so there was one conducted around 2019, 2020, where there was another audit done.
Oh, and
Right,
then we
previously.
also have ESSER audit, right? That, like during the COVID timeframe, when we get more money, that the ESSER grant audit has been happening too. So after the 2019 audit that Tiffany referred to, that the ESSER funding audit, I think we have done it for like 2 years. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, the
And
continuous
the
one.
ESSER one is the one for the employee, regarding the employee professional goals and those types of things. Is that what the ESSER audit was, or was it a different one?
I think it's ESSER 3,
Okay.
if my memory serves correctly. So it's mainly focusing on how,
The performance evaluation, was that the one?
no,
Oh, okay,
it was mainly checking the compliance with the grant requirements.
okay, yeah, so probably it was before, I think, because, okay, so that was my first question. And the second question was, I think I heard the explanation of how the grant recording is being done. So the question is, who actually does the recording into the system? Is it the principal and the teacher itself, or is it somebody else who does the actual recording of the transactions?
So it will be either the AAA or the FT,
Okay,
administrative assistant in elementary school and finance tech in middle and high school.
okay. Because the reason I think I was clarifying that was, I think I heard the training to be focused on principals and teachers, and I think that would include the AAs and the FTs as well. Okay, okay, yeah, thank you. And I think the next question was, as far as this particular grant fund audit goes, I think the question was also whether we had with tax withholding and everything. So is the system going to, update and send these to IRS? I mean, because filings are supposed to be done. I don't know the amount involved, so are we going to file amended returns? Are we required to do all of that? And have we have a process in place for all of that? Because I think I heard Esther say that the withholding process did not go through correctly because it was not entered into the right system.
So Esther, I think she's referring to the $500 disbursement that was paid directly to the teacher without any tax
Is it
withholding.
only 500, nothing more?
Yes, so it was from ExxonMobil for 500, but per our understanding, the school are supposed to be receiving an additional $1,500, which is three grant funds and 500 for
Okay.
each.
Okay, because these, like, I think, backing off of Esther, the filings have to be corrected as well if we did not do it. I don't know if that's in the scope or not, and so just wanted to highlight that.
Okay, Mr. Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Exactly, that was the point and the question that I had, whether we're going to go back and correct the tax filing, or are we just going to move along without just blinking our eyes and pretending that nothing has happened?
So, Mr. Moon, that $500 disbursement, we did not have any supporting documentation just to know what it was for. Like per the AA, the $500 was paid to the teacher to reimburse her for materials and supply that was bought for the garden at Campbell Elementary School. But we don't have any other supporting documentation to support the $500, other than the check that it was cut from the local school fund directly to the teacher.
So even if it is a reimbursement, Seema, it has to be run through the payroll? Like, you're supposed to withhold even for that?
If it's a reimbursement for supplies and materials, those are processed there. For our employees that receive reimbursements, we do submit those through our accounting operations team, which if this was, put through properly by the school, that would have been flagged, something we would have monitored in the Office of the Comptroller.
And then it would go, like you were saying, it would go through the HR, and then it would get the taxes withheld and so forth.
So even for reimbursement, you guys are required to withhold taxes? Whoa, okay, thank you.
Great. Any further questions? Okay, well, thank you to the team for their work on that, and to management for all the responses. We're moving on to item number 4, audit follow-up status. We have 2 documents for this, so over to Ms. Moore.
Thank you. I will be presenting the audit recommendation follow-up status as of July 31st, 2024. And I wanted to know, as Ryan just noted, that we had 2 documents. One document is as July 31st, 2024, and the other is as of April 30th, 2024. This was the April documentation was supposed to be presented in our June meeting, but it got canceled, so we wanted to provide both just as a reference. But I will be focusing on the July 31st document. And being that this is our first meeting of the year, I kind of wanted to walk through what our audit follow-up process is. So OAG will conduct follow-up on all open audit recommendations on a quarterly basis for any recommendations that are less than 3 years old. Once they become between 3 to 8 years, we will conduct follow-up on an annual basis, and all of those will be reported out to the audit committee. Once an audit recommendation becomes 8 years old, we close the audit. And I'm happy to say I don't think that's ever happened. We've always been able to close the recommendations. Okay, going on to the follow-up status. We currently have 7 audits with open recommendations. So that includes the succession planning, employee evaluation, food and nutrition services, and facilities maintenance, and we have 3 business process audits. Going on to item 1, which is succession planning. Always triple that word. There is 1 open audit recommendation which now has been closed, but there were 8 actions related to this recommendation to develop and communicate a division-wide succession plan and enhance leadership development framework. We noted we were able to verify and get documentation that OPL has worked to expand the leadership development pipeline by implementing an aspiring principal and aspiring assistant principal and aspiring principal cohorts. OPL has also hosted 2 core cohorts for supporting success for Schedule A employees. OPL developed and implemented the Operational Flex cohort program. OPL is bringing back the Pathways to Leadership Conference, which is scheduled to begin on October 29th. There has also been a draft guidebook for mentoring and onboarding of new staff that's coming on board, and HR expects to roll that out soon. The plan will be shared in the spring of 2025. As well as OPL, in collaboration with department and region leaders, is creating a viable curriculum for the principal induction program, and as well as the school-based administrator induction program. The seventh action is OPL is developing a cadre of seasoned principals to act as mentors through their Leading the Mission program. In that program, there have been 2 opportunities already, and the third class will start in the spring of 2025. And the final action is with the development of the new human capital management system, which has begun 3 phases of the pipeline. So currently, HR is working on the first phase of the HCM project, and this will help to align competencies and job descriptions to create pipelines for professional growth. And as well, these things are being communicated on the hub, as well as direct email communications and articles in the regular employee news. So this particular recommendation is now closed and the audit is now closed. For item number 2, which is the employee evaluation process audit, we have 1 recommendation that is still currently in process. That is related to employee evaluation monitoring and communication. We noted that quality control checks have begun on the instructional employees evaluation documentation, and they are currently working to complete the quality control checks for the operational employee files. For item 3, which is the food and nutritional services audit, 2 recommendations are currently outstanding, but they are not due yet. That includes the benchmarking and key performance indicators implementation, as well as updating the F&S regulation. For item 4, which is the facilities maintenance audits, there are 10 recommendations that are outstanding but not due until August of 2024. So that includes developing written procedures, conducting quality control review and customer surveys, enhancing preventive maintenance, forming dedicated preventive maintenance teams, continuing to develop and efforts to develop the facilities condition assessment, utilizing software to prioritize preventative maintenance, and establishing and tracking key performance indicators, as well as communicating those key performance indicators, exploring information system functionalities, and enhancing comprehensive compliance efforts. But those are not due until August of 2024.
Just to clarify, this report was prepared as of July 31st, so.
Right. For our last final audits, those are our business process audits. We have Holmes Middle School. This audit recommendation is still open as it relates to non-bank reconciliations. During our follow-up, we noted that FMR's reconciliations had continued to not be approved in a timely manner. So we will follow up again with them in the next reporting period. So this one will remain open. And the other 2 schools, including Bull Run Elementary, we were able to close out the recommendation related to the personnel payment, and as well as Poe Middle School, we verified that and closed the recommendation related to the non-bank reconciliations. So they have begun reconciling and approving in a timely manner.
Can I ask you a question on the Holmes Middle School one? Did they give you some explanation as to why they hadn't gotten right on that? That's pretty important.
Seema?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So for Holmes, when the audit was conducted, the FT was hired in October of 2023. And OAG did the audit and they pulled records 3 months after the hire of this FT, and then probably 4 or 5 months prior to that. So prior to this FT, there was turnover. We had 2 FTs turnover, and then the last FT that left, they did a backlog of not doing the reconciliations for several months, and that included the expenditure reconciliation, bank reconciliation, P-card reconciliation. So the new FT, there's a learning curve, unfortunately. When you have a new FT, it takes a good 6 months to learn all the processes of the job. So this FT had to catch up, not only keeping things going, but then go back and then try to do the reconciliation. So we did have my team go out. They assisted they assisted the school, and we also had a retiree go out to help them get caught up. So we just want to report that all the reconciliations for fiscal year 2024 are completed, including the 1 month for this fiscal year, which was required so far. So now when OAG goes out to do the audit, you will find that the reconciliations are done.
Okay, Mr. Moon, did you have a question on this one?
Yes, just order comment. Similar challenges existed, even prior to pandemic. So this is nothing new to me. However, at the same time, a question is coming to my mind whether we have higher rate of turnover for FT positions compared to other positions, or is it, and if so, whether anybody could share with the board members or audit committee members the reasons they are for. We have someone. Is that something that you can comment on, Mr. Smith? Or?
Certainly. So we have seen turnover in many of our operations across the school system. I'm looking here behind me, and in payroll we see turnover. I can go to any department behind me. I can go to many of those operational jobs in our schools, and we do find turnover. We've noted that since the pandemic, people have other choices, and people made different decisions post-pandemic around work-life balance, family balance. They also made different decisions around being able to work in the gig economy, working on social media. We were made aware of teachers making more money to sell their lesson plans on social media than they could tutoring and use it as a way to supplement their income. And so we're finding that as a challenge. We do know that we've slowed down with the number of, we've actually slowed down the number of teachers leaving the system for our teachers, and we're still working to do as much as we can to retain our operations staff.
When you said as much as we can do, what are those? What are the things that we do?
So some of the things that we've done just this last year in human resources, we did specialty job fairs for our operations team. We're working very closely with our program managers to give them more flexibility over the hiring process in terms of reviewing resumes. There might be things that the HR team doesn't find when they're reviewing a resume, because if I'm an HR specialist, I may not know exactly what a payroll team would be looking for as it relates to reviewing and statusing resumes. And so we're giving some more of that flexibility to our program managers, but really working closely with our assistant superintendents and our chiefs to try to do more in the area of recruiting and offering more job fairs.
I mean, hiring is one thing, recruiting and hiring is one thing, but retaining is another. Turnover happens because we are not able to retain, and if a learning curve takes, 6 months, that's a long time for something to go without proper, job being properly done.
So, and I think one of the things that you find with the training piece, and Ms. Arjwat behind me has often talked about the training that we do for our finance techs. We are trying to provide more training. You could see from the succession planning that our Office of Professional Learning is trying to provide more training through leadership training. Our offices are trying to provide more training for that on-the-job and operational training. And it is one of those areas where when you provide that training, somebody might say, this really might not be the job for me 6 months in, choose to do something else. And we find ourselves right back in that conundrum again of having to recruit, hire, and hope that this individual stays with it. We know that we also see individuals going out for a variety of health-related reasons. Once they get into a position, we might see vacancies. So it is a churn, and we're hopeful that our new Chief for Human Resources is able to help provide a different kind of response to some of our operational needs as it relates to recruitment and retention.
So I look forward to those responses.
Certainly.
Okay, recognize, Ms. Moore, we stopped you mid-presentation. Please continue.
Oh, that's okay. My last comments were that we will follow up again as of October 31st. and we'll continue to, follow up on any open recommendations.
Great, thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Smith. Over to
And
you.
if I may add, I just want to again, thank the OAG office and team and working with staff. And I also want to share how proud I am of staff for being able to close out many of the items on this list here. We know that we take this work very seriously. We take your recommendations very seriously, and we work to close these items out as quickly as we can. Many times there are multi-tiered, multiple parts to that work, and so I do feel I have to do a shout out to staff for ensuring that we're able to close these items out.
Okay, so we've seen a number of things presented to us here. Do any other committee members have questions? One question I have is, there was something I hadn't heard about before, which was the Path to Leadership Conference and the audit that was closed out. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, so Pathways to Leadership is a conference that we've had in Fairfax County for quite some time. I'm going to age myself a bit here, but I was actually in the first cohort of leadership interns 26 years ago in Fairfax County. So yes, there is a way through if you choose to follow through with leadership. And it was at a Pathways to Leadership conference that I learned about some of the opportunities that Fairfax County was able to offer for teacher leaders in our system, other leaders in our system looking to do different things with leadership. We had to pull back on the Pathways to Leadership conference these past few years as it related to different funding sources. And I think that now that the team has moved and is part of our Office of Strategy Planning and Learning, we've been able to find the funds to bring this conference back and fit it into our planning for succession planning in Fairfax County. And it's just a way for folks to come out to see what types of offerings are available. I'm actually going to be doing the welcome next week, so come on by and see what we have to say.
So I was in 5th grade then, so you weren't that old. Ms. Lady?
Yeah, I know that this particular audit is closed, but I do want to just elevate concern around succession planning for directors of student services. DSSs and DSAs were not named, but DSAs have assistants. DSSs should have assistants. And just as a point for people to further understand this, when we have an AP opening, we get lots of resumes. I mean, it used to get 100. Okay, now that we've got a teacher shortage and people are leaving, education, maybe that number is, 25 or 30. When we have a DSS opening, you're lucky if you get 3 or 5. And it's because it's such a different, and it's the scope of the work or the difficulty of the work is what it is. So I just want to bring that up, that the school counseling office does a cohort of people who have an interest in learning about it, but that's not an official office of, yeah, thanks.
No, and that's noted, and I'll certainly take that back to the team. It takes a very special and unique person, as you know, to be able to take all of the pieces. You have to be a big picture person and a very minute detail person when it comes to the work of a DSS. And so that is something that we can certainly take back and think about what that cohort looks like. And I'll even see what we can do to possibly develop something for next week's Pathways to Leadership.
Thank you, and thank you for that nice compliment.
Any other questions on anything we saw? Okay, seeing none, we are going to move on to our last agenda item, which is FY24 continuous monitoring results. Back over to you, Ms. Moore, I believe. Or it's you,
Hi.
okay.
Okay, so the following memo summarized the results of our office continuous monitoring procedures for online travel. So continuous monitor procedures allow our office OAG to utilize technology-based audit techniques to analyze patterns and trends and select and test transactions to be able to identify exception in a timely and efficient manner. This year, we expanded our continuous monitoring procedure to include two projects. The first one is the online travel, specifically non-local travel, and the second one, time and attendance transaction in My Time, which Danielle will speak more into it later on. As a pilot, we utilize the Audit command language, or the ACL analytical software, to help us analyze patterns and select and test transactions from the online travel system. So the primary objectives of the online continuous monitoring is to assess compliance with applicable requirements, determine if internal controls are adequate, if transactions are allowable, do not appear fraudulent, and supporting documentation is maintained for travel requests and travel reimbursement. So during this continuous monitoring, we obtain non-local travel expenses for the first quarter of FY 2024 and select a sample of 5 travel reimbursements to ensure that travel was appropriately pre-authorized and complied with FCPS Regulation 5310, travel local and non-local. Travel reimbursements were submitted in a timely manner. Per diem rates were accurate and appropriately reimbursed. And last, itemized receipts and other supporting documentation were submitted for both travel requests and travel reimbursements. We also utilize ACL to identify duplicate payments or transactions that were submitted by the same employee and were incurred on the same date and same amount. As a result, OAG did not identify any exceptions or area of concern, and no additional action was required from management. I'll pass it to Ryan or Danielle. Okay.
Thank you, Moya. As Moya mentioned, we've done continuous monitoring on My Time and the time and attendance transactions that are held within My Time. As she mentioned, we use ACL software to kind of analyze patterns and trends. For our My Time review, our objectives were to evaluate compliance with timekeeping policies, and including the effort to comply with the Fair Labor Standards Act, determining if internal controls are adequate and functioning as intended, and determine if transactions are reasonable and do not appear to be fraudulent. For the time and attendance data, we looked at the 6-month period of July 1, 2023 to December 31st, 2023. We also looked at some of the major controls, including segregation of duties, access controls, time and attendance policies, supervision, and review. I do want to note that looking at these transactions, OAG did not include verifying the accuracy of the hours approved by the supervisors at the work location. But we did utilize ACL to find some anomalies in the data. And one of the irregularities that jumped out was overtime or 15 hours of overtime charged by an employee in one single day. So initially we found 59 irregularities as it relates to this, and we took it a step further to kind of dig and determine if these were actually legitimate hours worked. And out of that, we found 3 instances which required a correction memo that were due to overtime work that were charged that shouldn't have been charged. The other 56 instances we noted were reasonable. We reached out to the offices, departments, and schools. We noted they were reasonable. These were hours that were worked on Saturday and Sunday, and as it relates to community use, there was a lot of time before the startup of a school year. So it takes time to come in, clean the school, and different things that need to be done. So there were no noted items of concern as relates to our review. And so I will pass it over to Ryan.
Great, thank you. Any questions or concerns on these two? Great, well, seeing none, that concludes the substantive portion of our meeting. We will next meet on...
I want to say October 28th, but I haven't checked the calendar. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. I got the confirmation.
So wear your costumes for Halloween next time, and we will see you then. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
This meeting of the Audit Committee is adjourned.